It was supposed to be a quick errand, 10, maybe 15 minutes tops. One of those things you squeeze in between back-to-back meetings without a second thought. That morning, Danica Rowe, 48 years old, CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech firm headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, stepped out of the back seat of her driver's sleek black Lincoln and walked into Summit First Bank. Tucked under her arm was a neatly organized folder containing all the paperwork for the final transfer of a high-value commercial account. She wasn't in a rush. Her entire calendar had been cleared for the sole purpose of finalizing this transition. One of several corporate accounts her company had been moving over the past few months. The relationship manager she had worked with for years had recently retired, and today's visit was simply a formality. Meet the new team, sign some paperwork, shake some hands. Straightforward. Her navy blue pantsuit fit like it had been sculpted to her frame. Hair pinned back in a clean, low bun. Diamond studs in her ears. Polished, not flashy. Her heels whispered across the tile floor, not clicking loudly. She moved like someone who had nothing to prove. Danica stepped up to the reception desk and smiled politely. "Good morning. I am Danica Rowe. I have a 9:30 appointment with the commercial accounts team." The young receptionist looked up from her screen and typed something in. One moment, and that's when it began. A woman in her mid-50s with platinum blonde hair and a stiff posture stepped out of a nearby glass office. Her smile was thin and strained, her steps brisk. "Can I help you with something?" she asked curtly. Danica extended a hand. "Yes, I'm Danica Rowe. I'm here to finalize a transfer with the business team." The woman didn't shake her hand. She glanced down at the folder Danica was holding. "And you're with which company?" "I'm a CEO of Grayline Technologies. I believe Peter Callahan handled the account before he retired." The woman's eyebrow arched slightly. Her skepticism wasn't subtle. "You're here alone?" "Yes," Danica replied calmly. "It's a confidential matter." There was a pause. Not the kind that says someone's thinking. This one said judgment, dressed up as confusion. "Right," the woman said, shifting her stance. "Well, we don't usually allow walk-ins for high-value accounts unless it's been pre-approved." "It has been," Danica said, her tone still composed. She reached into her folder and produced a printed email. "Here's the appointment confirmation. 9:30. From your internal scheduler." The woman scanned the paper and looked back up. "Are you sure this wasn't meant for someone else in your organization?" Danica didn't flinch. "I run the organization. My name's Paula Whitaker. I manage this branch. We've had some incidents recently. People misrepresenting credentials to gain access to our corporate clients. I'm sure you understand." Danica did understand. Too well. "Paula, would it help if I showed you my ID, corporate credentials, and the documents related to this transfer?" Paula's smile tightened. "It's just protocol, MS. Rowe, please don't take it personally." That line. That's always the line when it's deeply personal. Before Danica could respond, Paula turned to the receptionist and said, "Can you call security, please? Just to be safe, we need to verify her claims." Danica didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You're calling security on the CEO of one of your most significant incoming clients?" "I didn't say that. I just said we need to verify." That's when something shifted. A murmur from a man sitting in the waiting area. A sideways glance exchanged between two tellers. The atmosphere in the lobby changed, as if everyone realized at once. Danica had done everything right, and she was still being treated like she didn't belong. Danica opened her folder and, one by one, laid out her credentials like cards on a table. Her Arizona State ID, her corporate EIN confirmation, the board's resolution naming her as account signer, and Summit First's own welcome letter. "Here's everything," she said evenly. Paula barely glanced at the documents. "Anyone can print this stuff," she said. "I've been in banking for nearly 3 decades. I've seen it all. Fake CFOs, fake heirs to estates. We don't make exceptions just because someone claims they're important." Danica's voice was like ice. "So, it's not about the documents. It's about how I look, isn't it?" "Excuse me. You heard me. If I were a 55-year-old man in a Brooks Brothers suit, you'd be offering me coffee." "Ma'am, please lower your voice. My voice is already lowered, Danica said. You've seen the credentials. You've heard the name. But the only thing you actually noticed is that I'm not what you expected. There was a pause. Then Paula said, not loudly, but clearly enough, you just don't look like a CEO. The silence in the lobby thickened. Someone gasped. A woman near the loan office stopped pretending to check her phone. Even the receptionist's fingers froze above her keyboard. Danica didn't flinch. I've raised over $80 million in venture capital. Led 3 global product launches. Kinoted Suez. Closed international deals. I don't need to look like anything to be exactly who I am. Before Paula could respond, Danica turned back to the receptionist. Is your regional director in today? The receptionist nodded slowly. He is. Surprise audite. He's in the back conference room. Danica's lips curved into a tight, polite smile. Perfect. Please let him know Danica Rowe would like a word. I can handle this, Paula cut in. Let's not escalate. You already did. You called security. You questioned every credential without verifying a single one. No, Paula, you can't handle this. The receptionist picked up the phone and made the call. Moments later, the door at the back of the bank opened. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out, his expression sharp and alert. The moment his eyes met Danica's, his demeanor changed. MS. Rowe, he said warmly, extending a hand. I'm Marcus Dorsey, Regional Director. Peter always spoke highly of you. Danica shook his hand firmly. I appreciate that. I was looking forward to a smooth transition. Marcus turned to Paula. Was there an issue? Paula fumbled. I was just verifying the legitimacy of the appointment. Standard procedure. The receptionist spoke up. She called security, sir. Marcus blinked. On MS. Rowe. I was following protocol. Paula said quickly. We've had impersonators. I'm aware, Marcus said, which is why we verify credentials, not profile clients. He turned back to Danica. Would you mind coming with me? I'll handle your transaction personally. Danica nodded. Gladly. They walked toward his office. Behind them, the lobby remained silent. Paula stood motionless near the front desk, looking like the floor might open beneath her. Before disappearing into the hallway, Marcus turned. Paula, my office. After this meeting, we'll be discussing your role in detail. Danica followed him into a sleek, minimalist office. He offered her a seat. She didn't sit until he did. MS. Rowe, I want to apologize. What happened out there shouldn't have occurred. Not here. Not anywhere. I appreciate that, Danica said calmly. But it's not the first time. Probably won't be the last. We have procedures in place to prevent this very thing, Marcus said. She ignored every one of them. No, Danica said. She didn't ignore protocol. She made a judgment call. The moment she saw my face. Marcus leaned back and exhaled. He flipped through her documents, slowly, deliberately. This is all in perfect order, he said. But did she ever let you explain? Danica shook her head. She saw my name, saw my face, heard my title, and still asked if the appointment was for someone else. Marcus nodded gravely. That's going to be a serious issue for her. I didn't come here for someone to be fired. I know, but sometimes consequences are earned. The office phone buzzed. Marcus picked it up, then said send her in. Paula entered the room. Her shoulders hunched, her face pale. MS. Rowe, she said weakly. I owe you an apology. I misjudged. You don't have to lie, Danica said, cutting her off. You intended exactly what you did. You didn't believe I was who I said I was. And instead of checking, you humiliated me. Paula looked at Marcus, silently pleading for a rescue. None came. I've worked in this field over 2 decades, she began. Danica interrupted again. And none of that applied to me. You weren't cautious. You were confident. Confident you could get away with it. Marcus finally spoke. Paula, after reviewing the logs, the security call, at today's incident, I'm terminating your employment effective immediately. She blinked. Terminating? Are you serious? Very. You embarrassed this institution. Disrespected a top-tier client. This wasn't a lapse. It was a pattern. It stops today. Paula turned to Danica. I never meant to offend you personally. You didn't offend me, Danica said quietly. You disrespected me. Paula left without another word. Marcus looked at Danica. I hope that brings some level of accountability. It's a start, she replied. But by the time she stepped out into the warm Phoenix morning, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Danica paused near the curb while her driver opened the car door. Behind her, Summit First Bank looked exactly the same as when she'd entered, glass walls gleaming, logo sharp against the morning sun. But everything inside had changed. Marcus had walked her out personally, a gesture of both apology and accountability. I'll make sure the remaining paperwork is handled properly, he said. You shouldn't have to face this kind of disrespect. Ever. Danica took the folder from his hands and gave a small, polite nod. The paperwork, she replied, is the easy part. He gave a quiet laugh, more an exhale than anything else. I suppose it is. 2 customers opened the front doors for her as she exited, without being asked. One of the tellers behind the counter gave a small wave, hesitant but genuine. Outside, the Arizona sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows on the pavement. Danica turned back to Marcus one last time. You said something in your office that stuck with me, she said. That sometimes consequences are earned. He nodded slowly. I still believe that. But consequences without understanding don't change anything, she added. Marcus raised his brows, intrigued. I don't need Paula to suffer, Danica continued. What I need is for people to understand that this happens to Black professionals, especially women, every single day. In banks, airports, boardrooms, restaurants. And most of the time, no one gets fired. We just get dismissed. He didn't interrupt. He let her speak. If your bank wants to take this seriously, don't just write some vague statement. Don't post a PR-friendly apology. Have a conversation. Teach your managers what they clearly missed. Make it harder for this to happen again. To the next woman who walks through your door and doesn't look the part. Marcus drew in a long breath, his shoulders a little heavier now. You're right, he said. I can't undo this, but I can make sure it leads to something better. That's the real test, isn't it? Danica said, stepping into the car. Not what you do when people are watching. What you change when they're not. She didn't slam the door shut. She didn't even glance back. And as the car pulled away from the curb, her driver glanced into the rearview mirror. Everything all right, MS? Row. Danica looked down at her hands, then back toward the bank's glass facade. Paula had made a decision to disregard her. But the decision that mattered, the one that would carry weight, had already been made by someone else. Yeah, she said softly. Now it is. What Danica didn't realize in that moment was how fast stories can travel in the digital age. That same morning, a tweet went out, just a few lines from a customer who'd been sitting near the loan officer's desk. Just watched a Black woman CEO get denied service at her own bank. She stayed calm, called out the bias, and the manager got fired on the spot. I don't even know her name, but I'll never forget how she carried herself. By noon, the tweet had more than 40,000 likes. By evening, it was on Instagram, then Facebook, then the local news. A blogger in Phoenix cross-referenced a press release from Grayline Technologies and identified Danica by name. A local reporter confirmed the incident with Summit First. By nightfall, #DanicaRow was trending across the country. Danica didn't post anything. She didn't need to. Everyone else did. LinkedIn exploded with commentary. Corporate professionals, especially Black women, shared eerily similar stories. Being questioned by security at their own offices. Having to show ID multiple times to board first-class flights. Being called sweetheart while leading negotiations worth millions. The internet called Danica composed, poised, graceful. But those who knew better said it wasn't just grace. It was survival. Meanwhile, Summit First corporate office scrambled into crisis mode. Within 24 hours, they released a carefully worded statement. We are aware of the incident that occurred at our Phoenix branch. The employee involved is no longer with the company. Summit First is committed to equity, respect, and ongoing staff education. But that wasn't enough. The comment sections were ruthless. How many other Paulas are still working at your branches? Does your training cover the way bias feels when it walks through the door? Why should Black women have to stay calm while being disrespected. Danica remained silent for a while. 3 days after the incident, she agreed to appear on a podcast hosted by her longtime friend and business strategist, Leona Bates. It was a quiet studio in Tempe, nothing fancy. 2 microphones. No cameras. No scripts. You've been silent while the internet has exploded, Leona began gently. Why speak now? Danica leaned in. Because this isn't about me anymore, she said. It's about what the moment revealed. Which is, Leona asked, that even with the title, the credentials, the paperwork, people will still treat you like you don't belong. And if you speak up, you're making a scene. If you stay quiet, they take it as agreement. Either way, it's exhausting. For nearly an hour, they talked, not just about banks, but about boardrooms and bias, and the cost of always being the one who has to prove themselves first. Danica didn't cry. She didn't get angry. She told the truth, calm, clear, and undeniable. After the episode aired, a new wave of attention followed. This time, it wasn't performative. It felt deeper, thoughtful, reflective. Other CEOs reached out. Business journals ran editorials. One headline read, "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar." But Danica kept it all in perspective. She didn't want fame. She wanted change, real change. And she knew real change doesn't show up in headlines. It shows up in hiring policies. It shows up in who gets believed the first time. Still, the people who witnessed what happened at the bank that morning hadn't forgotten. Weeks later, Danica stood in front of a classroom at Arizona State University. She hadn't planned on public speaking that quarter. Her schedule was already full, but when a professor of business ethics invited her to speak to his class, she didn't hesitate. It wasn't a grand event. No cameras, no press, just 40 students, some scribbling in notebooks, some tapping quietly on laptops. Danica didn't use a podium. No PowerPoint. She just stood at the front and began. "I'm not going to tell you a fairy tale," she said. "I'm not going to tell you that if you work hard enough, no one will question you. Because that's not always true." The room was silent. Everyone was listening. You can have the title, the credentials, the contracts, and still be told you don't belong. Not because of anything you've done, but because someone else can't imagine success with a face that looks like yours. Her voice was steady, but every word struck like steel. When that happens, you have a choice. Shrink to make them comfortable, or stay exactly as big as you are, even if it makes the room tense. A young man raised his hand. "How did you stay calm when it happened? Weren't you angry?" "Of course I was," Danica nodded. "But anger only works when you know how to use it. That day, I used it to stay in control. I used it to make sure she couldn't dismiss me without facing me." Another student, a young woman, asked, "What would you say to someone who's just starting out, who hasn't built a resume like yours yet?" Danica paused. Know your worth before someone else has the chance to define it for you. And if they try to shrink you, speak anyway, even if your voice shakes. She said it like she was reminding herself, not just them. Afterward, students lined up to thank her. Some just wanted to shake her hand. One girl said softly, "I'm in engineering. I've thought about quitting. I didn't think there was space for someone like me." Danica looked her in the eyes. There is. And if there's not, make it. That night, back in her office, Danica sat alone with a cup of tea. Her inbox was still full. Her phone still buzzed with notifications. The attention would fade eventually. She knew that. Public memory is short. But some people would remember. The students. The customers in that bank lobby. The receptionist who watched a manager lose her job because someone refused to be silent. And maybe, just maybe, the next time a black woman walked into a bank wearing a tailored suit and quiet heels, she wouldn't be questioned first. She'd be greeted. She'd be respected. Because of one moment, one voice, one refusal to back down.